So picture this, December 12th, 2025. Former Senator Doug Jones announces he's running for governor of Alabama. Now that date, it wasn't just pulled out of a hat. It was exactly 8 years to the day since his absolutely stunning upset victory for the U.S. Senate. He's clearly hoping for another political earthquake, and it's setting up a race that puts two, well, profoundly different versions of America on a collision course. And if you want to understand Doug Jones, you have to go back to that incredible night in 2017. When he won, this was his message. It wasn't about party politics. It was about dignity and respect. And that wasn't just a line in a victory speech, you know? It was the absolute foundation of his worldview. And it's the very same one he's building this new campaign on today. So, who's his likely opponent? Well, that would be the current Senator Tommy Tuberville. And the contrast here, wow, it is stark. On one side, you have a former U.S. attorney who famously put Ku Klux Klan bombers behind bars. On the other, a former football coach who has become one of Donald Trump's loudest and most loyal allies. This matchup is so much more than just politics. It's a clash of two completely different American histories. Okay, so to really get what fuels a political figure like Tommy Tuberville, you can't just look at today's news cycle. You have to pull on a thread that runs deep, and I mean deep, through American history. It's a story of exclusion, and trust me, it's been with us for a very, very long time. You hear echoes of this idea constantly in modern politics, right? This notion that America is being invaded, that Western culture is being destroyed. It's always framed as a defense, a protection against some kind of threat. But what's fascinating is that this playbook, it's more than 100 years old. That kind of language about cultural preservation, a lot of it traces right back to here, a book from 1916 called The Passing of the Great Race. Now, this wasn't seen as some fringe pamphlet. It was presented as actual science. The author, Madison Grant, basically argued that the superior Nordic race was being swamped by inferior immigrants. And his solution? Well, it was eugenics, sterilization, and pretty much slamming the door shut on immigration. And you can just watch this toxic idea spread through the decades. It starts with those pre-Civil War fears about racial replacement. Then it gets a shiny, pseudoscientific makeover from Madison Grant. That so-called science then becomes the foundation for actual national law with the 1924 Immigration Act. And the final absolutely chilling endorsement? Adolf Hitler loved the book, called it his Bible. But here's the thing. That ideology of exclusion has never, ever gone unchallenged. For as long as it has existed, another, very different American tradition has risen up to fight it. And that, of course, brings us right back to Doug Jones. This is the counterargument. See, where the other ideology sees threats and outsiders, Jones's language is all about neighbors and universal dignity. He's making the case that this isn't some partisan squabble. It's a fundamental American value. This is what we're calling the ideology of justice. Now check this out, because Jones didn't just appear out of thin air. He is the latest link in this incredible chain. As a young man, he was inspired watching prosecutor William Baxley. Why was he even in that courtroom? Because Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas told him he should go watch. Douglas himself sat in the very same Supreme Court seat as the legendary Justice Louis Brandeis. And get this, Brandeis's own family helped nominate Abraham Lincoln. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a legacy, a torch being passed down through generations. You can actually see this fight play out across the last century. In 1916, the exact same year Madison Grant published his book on racial purity, Louis Brandeis became the first Jewish Supreme Court justice. So as segregation was becoming the law of the land, a legal counterattack was already building, which would eventually lead to Brown versus Board of Education. And that fight for justice continued all the way to a courtroom in Birmingham, where Doug Jones finally brought those KKK bombers to justice. And this, right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. The push for progress isn't some new thing, and neither is the backlash against it. These two forces, one that seeks to expand rights and another that seeks to limit them, are both deeply, fundamentally American. They have been in the tug-of-war for the soul of this country pretty much from the very beginning. And that brings us right back to where we started, Alabama. This governor's race is so much more than a choice between two candidates. It's a choice between these two powerful histories, and which one is going to define our future. So this is the choice, boiled right down. One path is rooted in hierarchy and fear, this constant battle of us versus them. The other is rooted in equality and the rule of law, a constant fight to expand the circle of who belongs. You could say it's the legacy of Madison Grant versus the legacy of Louis Brandeis, and it is playing out on a ballot right now. It is no accident that Doug Jones reaches all the way back to Abraham Lincoln in his campaign. He is deliberately tapping into that same historical strand that his ideological ancestors did. He's arguing for a government that serves all of its people, not just a select protected few. So, at the end of the day, while this race is happening in Alabama, the question it asks is for every single one of us. It forces us to look at these two competing American stories, one of exclusion and one of justice, and decide which one we want to write the next chapter of.